Hi, we're the Girls of Good Choice Reading. We're here to interview A.M. Robinson with her debut novel, Vampire Crush. I'm Wanda.
I'm Lisa.
And I'm Dee.
And I'm A.M. Robinson.
Thank you for coming with us and letting us interview you.
So what can you tell us about your book? Tell us a little bit about what Vampire Crush is about.
So Vampire Crush is about a 16-year-old girl named Sophie McGee who really wants to be editor-in-chief of her school newspaper. Unfortunately, the first assignment she gets with her junior year is to interview the new students that have come to the school. And this group of new students is weird. There's something fishy going on. The head one is named Vlad, and they all seem to know each other, and so she decides that this isn't quite right, and she wants to get to the bottom of it. Things are complicated when her, let's say, best friend and nemesis from childhood shows up again and starts living next door. His name is James, and they always sort of had a half-flirtatious, half-bantery kind of relationship. But she figures out that he knows the new students, and she wants to figure out why and what's going on.
Sounds interesting.
What made you want to write a vampire book?
Well, hey, I mean, when I was a teenager, I always loved vampire romance novels. I read L.J. Smith back when
I love
it was first up. I love the Vampire Diaries, and even though I love sort of like all the angst and drama, I always wanted to find a vampire book that just was a little bit goofier, a little bit more screwball. Like, 'cause I think that there's a lot of opportunity for humor when you take people from like 200 years ago and like transplant them into a modern high school. So Vampire Crush, I wanted to write something that had a little bit of fun with the genre, like sort of played with the things that Twilight and Vampire Diaries and some of the other like vampire series have put out there, but in interesting ways with a couple of twists.
So are you okay that a lot of people compare it to Twilight and they, say that it's very similar to it in the sense of the 6, vampire characters?
Yeah, I mean, I am okay with that. Like, I think that like Twilight has sort of, it's the thing that brought the genre back a little bit from the dead. So I think that that's one of the reasons that I mentioned Twilight in the book, because I feel like any book that's writing about vampires in high school,
it gets compared.
Yeah, and you're going to be, I mean, Twilight is the obvious comparison, and Twilight is sort of ever present, so I wanted to play with that just a little bit. Like, I thought that it would seem weird if like Sophie was completely not aware of sort of the Twilight phenomenon.
Alright, how about what do you think, with so much vampire books out there in any vampire genre, the paranormal genre, what do you think from your book stands out?
Well, I hope that I think Sophia has a pretty unique voice.
She was funny.
Yeah, she's a little goofy, like, she's a loner, but she cares about people a lot. I think she's very sarcastic, and she has...
that's me. You wrote about me.
Yeah, yes. So it's a very dramatic inner life. But I think that she's very driven. She's a little too competitive sometimes. Like, she has a friend, Lindsay, who's also going after the editor-in-chief position, and she does something that's not very nice to her with somewhat drastic consequences. But yeah, I think the voice, I also think that it's really goofy. Like, I really tried I tried to be as screwball as possible when I was writing it. There's a vampire luau, which...
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
And what was your, publishing process? How long before you actually got Vampire Crush published?
It took me about, I would say, a year to write, and then I got feedback from all of my friends, and then I sat on it for about 6 months, and then started writing again. So I'd say from starting writing to the publishing deal was about 2 years.
That's
total.
good, though.
Yeah, no, actually...
And you got in with a good company.
Yeah, the Harper team has been great. I think they do fantastic books.
They do.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. But yeah, I think I had it a little bit. I always read all of these sort of very dramatic publishing stories, or like, I wrote for 15 years and I've written 10 books that haven't gotten published.
Oh, wow.
And that's what the stories I say. I felt very lucky, because this was the first book that I wrote,
But
and it got published.
that's what's popular now. Paranormal genre is like high in the rise. Like,
Yeah.
Yes.
It's very popular.
I'm a huge paranormal lover,
I am
so...
too.
Like I said, I'm getting there.
Is it going to be a series, or...?
I'm hoping so. Like, I'm actually working on a sequel right now, like trying to write a couple of chapters and like an outline for where I would like to take the the book. It was originally thought of as a series, but then I sort of molded it to try to stand on its own. Like there's still some questions at the end of the book, but I think it can also sort of stand
alone. I think it could
as its own novel. But I love Sophie. I love James, and I love sort of all of the kooky vampire characters. So I would really love to sort of.
So if they decide that they don't want it to be a series, or what, do you have something else in mind?
Yeah, I've been working on a book involving ghosts. It's actually a historical one.
I've been talking to her. That one's to be a book with ghosts.
Yeah, it'd be set at the turn of a century New York, so sort of like early 1900s New York. So and about a girl who sort of has a ghost trapping business with her uncle. And so they trap ghosts and they figure out why they're still here and try to just like solve crimes so that they can move on. But things get complicated.
You heard it first on Good Choice Radio.
But things get complicated when one of her uncle's old partner shows back up. He's a little evil. So.
Oh, okay.
Sounds good. I'll read that one.
Okay. I'm one reader, so I can keep going.
What are your favorite type of books other than paranormal to read?
Well, I actually work in publishing, so I read a lot of manuscripts, mostly adult though. But when I like to take breaks with YA fiction, so I've been reading.
Yeah, we do that too every now and then.
Yeah, because I'm like it's enough that I sort of feel like I'm cheating on work. Just a little. Right now I'm reading Pretty Monsters by Kelly Link. It's she writes these really wonderful, bizarre sci-fi fantasy stories, but they're also a little funny.
I just recently got into sci-fi.
Yeah, she's really great, and I'm almost finished with it, and I plan to buy the rest of her books. So.
Okay. So what is your favorite book?
My favorite book. Let's see. Actually, I really love this book. Growing up, I really love this book, Phantom by Susan Kay, which I don't know if anybody has read, but it's a retelling.
I think I've heard of her, but I've never heard of Phantom.
It's a retelling of Phantom of the Opera.
Oh.
But from sort of Eric the opera ghost, his birth, growing up in France, sort of as this ostracized, disfigured child, all the way through the story of Phantom of the Opera that we know, which is set sort of in the actual opera house. I read that book so many times that the pages fell out of it. And then I went looking for another copy, and it was out of print for a while, and they were selling for $100 on Amazon. Yeah. No, it's really popular. It's sort of a little cult classic, and I think they brought it back into print. So that book, I think, does a really amazing job.
Wow, to be $100 on Amazon?
Yeah, and that one was for a copy
that
had
signed?
a bug hole in it. What?
Does it come signed?
No, not signed. Not signed at all.
It's neat for $100. Wow.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot.
Okay. Did you always want to be a writer?
I did. I actually, growing up, I would always write little stories and things. I sort of took a break in high school and college. That's when I decided, I was like, no, I want to work in publishing. I want to work with authors instead of being an author. So I sort of went that direction. But then, I don't know, a couple of years ago, I was just I had this story idea, and I really wanted to write it, and Sophie's voice got in my head. And so I sat down and started, and now, I mean, it's a lot of fun just to see a finished product and to see people reacting to what you've written. So.
And what do you think of the blogging world, with your book and everything, all this?
It's been a lot of fun. I didn't read a lot of the YA blogs before, but then I started sort of getting on Twitter and following everyone, and it's such a dynamic community, and I love how close-knit, now that I've friended a lot of people on Twitter, it's nice to see how many people talk back and forth with each other, and it's oh, I read this too. So yeah, no, it's really fun. I think that's particular to young adult, because I know that in the adult fiction world I haven't seen that as much, and so it's really nice to see readers really connecting with each other.
Oh yeah, we discovered a whole new world.
Is there one author that you look up to?
There are tons, but then whenever I get asked this question, I'm just oh, look at you.
It's like me.
I do really like L.J. Smith a lot. Because I think she's a great plotter. I don't know, I just remember all of her series. I've actually, I like the Vampire Diaries, I love Dark Visions, and occasionally will still look for Gabriel Wolf, Caitlin Fairchild fan fiction online every now and then. But so I think that she like I just think that, and she was doing the paranormal thing like long before anyone else was, and so I always like to sort
Like
of
the 90s, right?
yeah, like, I mean that was my first exposure to like paranormal romance and like paranormal teen books, and so I think I always had a soft spot in my heart.
And can you tell us a little bit, you know, if there is going to be a second book, what it would be, like a little sneak peek?
Yeah, well, I don't want to give away much about the ending of Vampire Crush, but it'll be, so James and Sophie are together in the next book. But things get a little complicated again because Sophie at the end of the last book, like, something happens, and so she sort of is having a lot of vampire side effects. So in the second book, she would be dealing with all of the things at the end, like getting glimpses of what people are thinking, getting, she has a craving for red meat, like just, it's her dealing with that, her dealing with like a new relationship with James, and then there are going to be, nobody's going to show up at the high school in the next book, but a couple of people are going to show up in the town, that have to do sort of Sophie's history, and you know, she's going to have to try to figure out what to do with them.
Oh, sounds very interesting.
And while you were writing Vampire Crush, what was like your inspiration? If you hit like a spot, oh, I don't feel like writing today. Like,
What did you do to get inspired?
Yeah. I would just, I don't know. I like to just write. Vampire Crush is sort of half vampire jokes, and so I would always like just sort of let myself write and make jokes, and then go back and edit them later. But it's, I think when you get to this, like a sticking point, you have to be like, you just need to put words on the page because you can always go back and fix them afterwards. So I would just sort of sit down and say, okay, I like this scene, I'm just going to let this scene go wherever it wants, and then figure out what to keep and what not to keep.
Okay, and we also usually ask this pretty much almost every author. Do you have like a soundtrack? Because it's like the biggest thing now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't. I'm really
like
bad.
a playlist?
Yeah, I'm really bad about making playlists. So I have trouble writing like to music a lot of times because they're very distracting. Like I actually would listen to a lot of soundtracks because there's like no lyrics.
Yeah.
So I would keep that in the background.
that would make sense because I'd be there singing it rather
And then
than
writing the words to the song.
Yeah,
And rather than writing, I can understand.
So yeah, no, I would definitely write. I would pick a lot of movie soundtracks, like some of my favorite movies, and just put those on and go from there.
Okay, that's good.
Can you describe the book in 5 words?
5 words, huh?
This is such a tricky question.
You could just use adjectives, like it doesn't matter.
Evil vampires make journalism difficult.
That was good.
Evil vampires make journalism difficult.
We have Cassie. She's from Dark Readers, the blog.
Oh, okay.
She wanted us to ask you because she loved it. She read Vampire Crush, and she's actually in
She was
London.
great. Yeah, I read
Yeah.
her review.
She wanted to know if you had the chance to go out to dinner with any of your characters. I know I'm not wording it correctly, but who would it be from the book?
I love Violet. I think would be a great best friend to have because she's a little bit off kilter, but very sweet, and sort of always has like her friend's best interests in mind. I just think that she would be hilarious. I'd also love to see what she would be wearing when she showed up today.
Yeah, I laughed at so many parts.
Okay.
I was telling her, I was like, her friend is so funny in the book. What's your favorite movie?
My favorite movie? My favorite movie is Shaun of the Dead, which is sort of, it's like a zombie parody movie. I really love Simon Pegg because I think he's hilarious, and I always try to see any movie that he's in. I really love Hot Fuzz too, but I've watched Shaun of the Dead more times than it's probably healthy, but yeah.
And when you're not writing, what do you do, like, for fun?
For fun?
And not obviously reading manuscripts.
Yeah, not reading
For
manuscripts.
fun.
For fun.
Downtime.
I've recently gotten back into playing video games. I'm sort of a video game nerd when I was growing
Sims.
up. Yeah, I love The Sims. I actually, one of the things I did when I had writer's block for Vampire Crush was make Sims
Create the
all of the
character.
I
characters.
do that for my favorite book.
Yeah, and see what they would do. Except it wasn't very helpful for writer's block because you'd be like, oh, Vlad's making grilled cheese sandwiches again, and Violet's throwing a water balloon at someone. It was like there's only so much you can
I
get out
do the
of that.
same. That's so funny that you said that.
But yeah, no, I love
Well,
the
thank you so
sarcasm
much.
stuff.
Yes, so thanks for having me.
Really excited. You're welcome. We jumped in the chance the minute you said yes, so thank you very much.